Pete,
Yeah.
I I think we should talk about sex today.
I thought you'd never ask.
Welcome to the Three Wise Men of Divorce, Money, Psych, and Law podcast. Sit down with the California divorce experts, financial divorce consultant Mark Hill, marriage and family therapist Pete Russos, and attorney Shawn Weber for a frank and casual conversation about divorce, separation, co-parenting, and the difficult decisions real people like you face during these tough times. We know that if you are looking at divorce or separation, it can be scary and overwhelming. With combined experience of over 60 years of divorce and conflict management, we are here for you and look forward to helping by sharing our unique ideas, thoughts, and perspectives on divorce, separation, and co-parenting.
What would you like to talk about, Shawn?
Well, I don't want to just randomly talk about sex. I mean, we are the three wise men. I don't think it would be good for our brand to just be three old guys talking about sex. That'd be a little creepy.
Mm-hmm.
But what I do think is important to talk about is just I've seen this in cases, and I know Mark, you've seen it, and Pete, you've seen it too.
Sure.
How sex, different aspects of sex, can play out in the work that we do. And sometimes I get more information than I care to, but it's part of life. It's an important part of a relationship. And I noticed that you are a licensed and trained sexual or sex therapist, right?
I'm a certified sex therapist. Yeah.
Okay.
That's
I want
part
to
of my
get the words
practice.
right. A certified sex therapist. And so you have some knowledge in this. You work with folks who are there's a problem, I imagine, with sex. I mean, what gets somebody to need to call you?
Well, a whole host of things. It could be people that are dealing with sexual dysfunctions or sexual issues. I do a lot of work with couples that are wanting to create a greater sense of connection, emotional connection through sex, using sex as a way to connect with each other at a deeper level, but also as a way of expressing themselves and their sexuality, their eroticism, understanding themselves and their sexuality and their eroticism more fully and owning it. And I think that sex is, it's a central part of the human experience. And sex and self-esteem are so closely connected that I think that sexual issues and sexual dynamics can create real complications in not just the divorce process, but can be, a significant kind of factor in the tensions that people experience in committed relationships. And it ties to issues of respect. It ties to issues of acknowledgement and consideration. It goes to the core, I think, of what it means to be human.
So I remember when I was a young man and
Yeah.
my mom, was talking to me about sex
Mm.
as moms do with their children on
Yeah.
occasion. And she said, it doesn't, it's not, so many people make such a big deal out of sex, but it's like 20 minutes on a good day. And so what are you going to do with the rest of your time? That was her response to it.
Mm.
But I think there's something deeper to that. I mean, yes, maybe that physical act is a short period of time, but it has such an impact on a relationship, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because I think that it starts with how the individuals define themselves as sexual being, and then it's the vulnerability that they're willing to bring into the relationship to really represent and talk about who they are and how they want. And ultimately, I think the important thing for couples, I'm talking about in the context of a couple's relationship, is how the partners use sex as a way to connect with each other, that sex becomes a vehicle for connection. And so that requires quite a bit of vulnerability. It requires quite a bit of discipline and commitment, mindfulness and deliberation. So, it deserves that because again, I think it's one of the most important aspects of the experience of relationships that human beings can have.
I think it bears mention because you never, it's not really relevant to bring up sex in court for the most
Hmm.
part. Um, California, for example, is a no fault state. So if somebody had an affair, nobody cares if the sex life was bad. Nobody
Right.
cares at court or if sex stopped happening.
Hmm.
Um, but it's one of those, we had a podcast episode that we've done before talking about relevant, irrelevant issues. And it's one
Yeah.
of those huge issues that are just, you can't do divorce law for the amount of time that I've done it without hearing a lot of people telling me more information about their sex life than I thought I needed to know.
Hmm.
But I think that's an example of why it is really important to people as a
Hmm.
And
humans.
I've seen it have, sorry, Shawn,
Go ahead, Mark.
I've seen it have financial impact too.
Hmm.
In other words, if there's been an affair and money has been spent on the new paramour, then there's a reimbursement issue. Um, there are concerns around, the children. And I have, introducing to new partners can be a huge issue that can blow up a divorce case. Um, and I think that the most difficult cases are ones where the jilted party or the person that perceives them as being wronged because there was a divorce on, an affair on the other side, wants or feels entitled to some kind of financial remuneration. They want to be paid for their pain. They think there's a value that should be attached to that. And as you just pointed out, nobody cares in the courts, but it can disrupt a case and prevent it from moving forward.
And when we also talk about, okay, so somebody has sex outside of the relationship, there's a betrayal there.
Yep.
There's also the couples that just stop having sex with each other.
Hmm.
I've also had the cases where they're getting divorced, but they continue to be, for lack of a better term, friends with benefits,
Hmm.
and they
Hmm.
continue having sex, which
Right.
always struck me as amazing.
Hmm.
But you said something before as we were preparing for this, Pete, that the sexual dysfunction that you see, or maybe for lack, I don't know, sexual weirdness, that's my word, that you might see, it's usually symptomatic of something else.
Yeah, I think that the number one kind of factor that can cause sexual difficulties between partners is an erosion of respect and the development of resentment for issues outside of the bedroom. I think that generally speaking, when people get married, people want to be wanted. They want to be chosen. They want to be desired. They want to certainly think of themselves and experience themselves as being desirable. And so if you're in a relationship and that sense of connection or being cherished, as that begins to diminish, or if you think your partner isn't treating you appropriately or treating you respectfully, that is going to impact the extent to which, for most people, I think it has an impact on the extent to which they want to be sexual with the other person. Sex often gets weaponized. It's often used as a way of punishing
Mm.
people. But I think, and this is a generalization, and I'm talking about in emotional terms. I'm not talking about in terms of people that might be interested in kink behaviors and things like that. But I think in generally speaking, uh, people are not interested in having sex with people whom they don't think respect them or consider them or who don't have their best interests at heart. And so if the collaborative alliance between partners has broken down outside of the bedroom, if I can frame it that way, in these other areas of the marriage, whether it be roles and responsibilities to keep the house up, in co-parenting, in financial contributions, in relationships with extended family, whatever it is, if the collaborative alliance is breaking down in those parts of the relationship, it's likely to have a negative impact on the sexual dynamics between the partners as well. And so in that way, I think the sexual dysfunction is often symptomatic of these other dynamics.
Yeah, which I mean, you're describing things that can be very toxic to a relationship.
Absolutely.
The lack of respect piece, I think, is really big, isn't it? You know,
Huge. I think it's the most pernicious uh, factor in relationship breakdown.
really.
Yeah.
In what way? What are you seeing that leads you to that conclusion?
Well, again, I think that it's hard to be generous, and I think an erosion of respect is more likely to create a quid pro quo kind of economy between partners. You know, it's hard to be generous with somebody that you don't think reciprocates with generosity, and it's hard to be generous with somebody that you don't think respects you or considers you.
Mm.
So when people begin to think that they're being maltreated, that is going to fuel the idea that they deserve more, that they deserve better.
Mm.
Now,
That
I think
ties
that
into what
that
I was
sense that
saying.
I deserve more and I deserve better, I think that makes people more susceptible, if you will, or vulnerable to the validation that they could receive from an affair partner, for example.
I was going to say I've had so many cases where the person that stepped out of the relationship said that they stepped out of the relationship because the person that they were in the relationship with was cold or didn't respect them.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't, when they were with this new person, they felt loved, they felt validated, as you were saying,
Yeah.
and that there was a reason why they left the relationship. You know, and I've been told that I should not excuse bad behavior by saying,
Mm-hmm.
well, they left the relationship because somebody was, cold at home, but it's not a vacuum, right? There's all these things
Yeah.
that are happening as a result of the relationship dynamic, I would imagine.
Well, when I talk with, and I do a lot of work with couples that are coming to me because there's been an affair and they're really trying to heal and recover from it. And I think it's really important that I say to those couples, those clients at the start of the work, and this is always something when I say this, people look at me like I'm crazy. But I say to them, it is possible for a person to have an affair with integrity. And they look at me like I'm nuts. But then I go to explain what it is.
Yeah.
And this is what it is. So, most certainly, I think it's quite common for couples when they get married, they pledge fidelity to each other, right? They're making a monogamous commitment. That's usually where most couples start.
Yep.
And so an affair with integrity is when partner A goes to partner B and says, hey, look, I know when we got married, we promised to be faithful to each other, but I've decided that I'm no longer willing to uphold that promise. I haven't acted on it yet. I haven't done that yet. I haven't violated it yet, but I've decided that I'm going to, and I'm telling you about it first because I recognize that you have a choice in this as well. That is what an affair with integrity looks like. Because I
Wow.
think the violation of an affair, what it's really about is one partner unilaterally taking the other person's choice away.
Right.
And so in the
So,
example that you gave, if partner A goes to partner B and says, hey, my experience of you is that you're treating me coldly, that you're treating me disrespectfully, and I've decided that I'm no longer willing to tolerate that. So we either need to work on this together, or I'm going to have to maybe make some tough decisions about our relationship.
and how often do you see somebody actually doing that, Peter, without
It,
your
it, it,
without your coaching ahead of time?
it's never happened, but
Yeah.
I'll tell you why.
Never happened.
It's never happened, but I'll tell
Yeah.
you why the intervention, why my framing it that way, I think is really important. Because it says to the partner who had the affair, what you did was you unilaterally took the other person's choice away, and you have to own that. There was nothing in the marriage that justifies you doing that.
I
Because
think that's huge.
most people would recognize that they themselves don't want their choices unilaterally taken away from them.
The sin here, I mean, I'm using the word sin loosely,
Yeah, yeah.
but the sin here is not so much the affair, although I'm not going to,
Right.
debate people about that, but It's more about you took my choice away to decide whether I wanted to be in a relationship with a person that did not honor the vows that we took in front of our priest and God and everybody.
Or even further, you took my choice away from me as to whether or not I was willing to work on the fact that you're sexually dissatisfied with me, or that you're just you're frustrated the way we define roles and responsibility, whatever the issue was.
I had a guy the other day that I was talking to, and
Yeah.
he had an affair,
Yeah.
been having an affair for 2 years,
Yeah.
and then he finally, told his wife,
Mm-hmm.
and he acknowledged. He said, "I did this the wrong way.
Mm.
I didn't." He used your word. He said, "I did not have integrity. I should have said something 2 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and that was my mistake. I was wrong." But what he had done had caused so much damage in the relationship, and so now she's like, "Well, I thought I could trust you, but now I don't know if I can trust you about our money."
Here's the other
Right.
side of it, though, Shawn, that
Yeah.
I think that, and again, this is the conversation that I have with couples that are trying to address the aftermath of an affair. For the partner who had the affair, the really important piece of work, or a really important piece of their work, is coming to understand and take responsibility for the fact that they made this unilateral decision. It was a usurpation of the other person's autonomy. For the aggrieved spouse, the challenge of the work is being able to see the affair as a small piece of a much bigger marital picture. It's an important piece, but there's a bigger picture, and the bigger picture is this co-created dynamic that all couples co-create their relationship. And so what was happening between the partners? What was that person not speaking up about that was leading to the erosion of respect, or the furthering of resentment? What was going on between the part? I mean, it's always interesting to me when couples come in and they've had an affair, and one of the things that they'll point to is the fact that they haven't been having sex. I always want to know, well, what did you think would happen when you guys stopped having sex?
Yeah.
That
So
pressure would go somewhere. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. What did you think for these two people as sexual beings? What did you think would happen? Well, I never thought that she would have an affair or he would have an affair. Okay, you didn't think that, but what did you think would happen? And often I've got to very painstakingly stick with that question because people want to avoid owning the fact that often they just choose to ignore it, which
Peter,
means they let down their end of the stewardship responsibility that both partners have for all facets of the relationship, including the sexual part of the relationship.
I'm wondering, Peter, do you see gender differences? And the reason I ask that is because I recall a case I had where the husband had been seeing prostitutes. They'd stopped having sex and he'd been seeing prostitutes, and he'd foolishly put it on a credit card and his wife found it. And she ended up then having an affair with somebody they both knew. And he was incensed. Mine didn't mean anything. You wouldn't have sex with me. It was just an act. But now you have this emotional relationship with Bill, who we both know. And every time I see him in church or whatever it is, and so is that a gender difference, or is it
Well, I
just,
think there are, and I don't think this is born out of research, but the anecdotal sense that I've heard, within the field is that for women, an emotional attachment is the greater betrayal, and for men, so for women, and I'm talking really more about heterosexual relationships. For women, if their husband has an emotional connection with somebody else, that's a greater betrayal. And for men, if a female partner has a sexual connection with another man, that's a greater betrayal. I don't know if that holds up in terms of the research. But to me, Mark, what's so interesting about that scenario that you're describing, and I've heard stories like that, what I'm always curious about is what does, in that example, the guy think it communicates to his wife that he's willing to have sex that doesn't mean anything? And how in the world is that supposed to make her feel good about having sex with him? And then all of a sudden, when that is on the table, that opens up this much broader discussion about dynamics in the relationship, what sex means to them both, and what people can communicate to each other, or what they really are communicating to each other by the way they view sex and by the way they engage with sex.
The other thing we've seen a couple of times, Shawn, and it's not that prevalent, but we have seen it, of couples deciding to go into open relationships. And then one deciding it's not working for them, and the other one goes, it's working just fine. And those cases are very complicated.
Very complicated.
And it can be very difficult to, at least from my layman's standpoint, to understand what that dynamic does in the divorce.
And
how do we approach that in the
well,
divorce?
I would differentiate these cases. We've had the cases where they identify as polyamorous,
right?
and from the outset they've had multiple partners. That's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is they were married as monogamous couple,
Yep.
and then one of them brought up, "Hey, could we try having multiple partners?" And there would be various. I mean, they would both try it, or maybe one would try it. And I mean, when I get it that I'm seeing a skewed population, probably because they're all coming for a divorce. But what usually happens is when they're looking for a divorce is one of them didn't feel comfortable with it, maybe actually participated in it, felt gross about it, and then it just kind of poisoned everything after that. I've seen that. I mean, what are your thoughts on that, Pete?
Well, I think that what that represents is a situation where the one of the partners is initiating a really significant renegotiation or redefining of the marital contract. And so where I think healthy divorces, if you will, I can't think of a better way to frame it, that happen under those circumstances are when people really decide and own what's solid in them about their sexuality. And if a person decides that it would be a violation of their integrity to engage in certain sexual practices, some people have decided they just can't cross that line because it violates their integrity. For other people, it may be that they're not willing to sacrifice certain aspects of their sexuality because it would be such a gross violation of their integrity. People that are ending a marriage for those reasons, those can be really sad and difficult processes, but it can actually bring people together in a divorce process, working in a more collaborative way because they both recognize that this really is about authenticity, rather than it being that one person is feeling spurned, or the other person is feeling like it's just not enough, where their self-esteem is taking a really more personal injury, or getting diminished in that way. So I think they're really complicated cases, and for couples that are trying to navigate the opening of a relationship, often the process for them and really trying to explore and figure out, is there a meeting in the middle that can work for them both? If one partner wants non-monogamy and the other person wants monogamy, those can be tough distances to try to bridge, or tough differences to try to bridge. And so I mean, I've had a number of cases where couples have just decided for the right reasons that they can't stay married because doing so would be too much of a sacrifice for either one or both of the clients.
Got another question.
Go ahead, Mark.
If I may. I know we're running out of time here.
Yeah.
I had a guy once who had multiple affairs, admitted it. And then he turned to me one time and he said, "But I'm just a sex addict. I've been diagnosed as a sex addict by my therapist." And it was almost like, well, I can't do anything about it. It's not my fault. I'm an addict. What do you think about that?
I
Well,
have some thoughts, but
there is nothing in the science that establishes that there is such a thing as sexual addiction.
Okay.
One of the things that I specialize in is the treatment of out of control sexual behaviors, and that is a very real thing. And part of the treatment for that is helping the individual, and this work also happens in the context of couples work, but really figuring out and defining their view of what healthy sexual expression is. So the concern that I have with somebody who continues to engage in what they regard as addictive behavior is, what's the understanding behind that? And to me, it can be, and the concern that I have is it is a way of abdicating responsibility that allows the person to continue engaging in behaviors that is either unhealthy to them or destructive to people that they purportedly care
you
about.
can't use the excuse of an addiction, you're saying,
Right.
to justify
Right.
your poor choices.
Right. And the other,
Yeah.
one of the reasons why the notion of sexual addiction, I think, is dangerous, is you can abstain from smoking, you can abstain from drinking, you can abstain from gambling, you can abstain from overeating, but for human beings, abstaining from sex is really contrary to who we are as biological creatures. And so I think it's all about coming to terms with and defining what are a person's healthy sexual practices.
Where does religion play into that? I've had cases where a very religious couple, and then it came out, the wife found that the husband had been engaging in a lot of pornography viewing and masturbation and things like that, and it really upset her because she viewed it as the same as an affair, and their religious teachings were that it was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very difficult for them to reconcile that. I mean, what have you seen as far as people's, values around sex and how that impacts?
I think religion and faith has a very, very significant impact on how people define what's appropriate, what's normal, uh,
What's okay?
what's okay, and
Yeah.
that often, um, there I think is a process that can be really difficult and terrifying for people when they realize that there's something that is just dissonant for them vis-a-vis their religious community or faith community and what it is that they feel inside in terms of their own sexuality. And that process of exploring that can be incredibly painful and incredibly frightening, but be really what's required for a person to be able to move towards a greater authentic sense of who they are as a sexual being and how they define their eroticism.
Sexuality with integrity again. It comes back to the
Yeah.
integrity piece
And authenticity
and
and
authenticity.
ownership. Yeah.
What's upsetting was upsetting to this woman was that he was sneaking around.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big part of it.
Right.
Now, I don't
And
know,
just
like, do you normally go up to people and say, honey, I really have to look at pornography every day? And
well,
how does that go?
but there certainly have been, I've seen there are couples that they agree on a don't ask, don't tell kind of approach. There are couples that there is a level of transparency where, partner A might go to partner B and say, "Hey, I'm feeling like I'd like to be sexual tonight. Would you be interested? Like to be sexual with you?" And partner B might say, "Well, I'm just not into it." And partner A might say, "Okay, well then I'm going to use sexual media and pleasure myself." There's no one right way of doing it. But this is something for, I think when somebody presents with a situation that you're presenting with, I think it's really important for the partner who is upset by the behavior to really understand and unpack why. What is it about the behavior that is threatening or concerning to them? And certainly if somebody thinks you do that and you go to hell, it's understanding, right?
Mhm.
But for the other person to also be able to define and understand what it is about that activity that they enjoy. Why is it meaningful to them? And is it providing something that upon inspection they themselves believe is healthy and appropriate?
So again, it comes back to choice.
Yeah.
Are you allowing
Yeah.
people to make choices?
Yeah.
It's a very interesting discussion. And I think we could go for another hour and a half talking about it. And maybe we should schedule in more discussions about this kind of thing, because I do think it touches on so much of what we do in divorce work.
And I think it's also the thing that ties back to healthy marital functioning as well. That's that's a thread that runs through healthy marriages as well as dysfunctional marriages.
I think it's an excellent point, because I meet with people when they're divorcing, but I'm also thinking about, and I'm not a therapist, but what's their next relationship going to be like?
Right.
Is there something they're going to learn from the relationship they're in now, so that maybe the next time they get into a new relationship, maybe they don't carry a dysfunction over? Or I wish people would not stop with their therapy after the marriage family therapy stops.
Mm-hmm.
I wish they would continue to kind of understand themselves and what led them to where they are.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's one of the things we do see, because people go, I've had clients say this, more often men than women, but still both sexes say this. Oh, we tried therapy. It didn't work.
It didn't work.
It didn't work because we got divorced. Well, I think sometimes therapy works because the people get divorced.
Yeah.
I usually ask, well, what is your next partner going to think about?
Yeah.
maybe you need to work on some things so that your next partner gets a better partner. Yeah. But that takes some introspection, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Well, guys, we've done it again. I think it was we spent some time talking about some important issues. And so, Pete, if someone needed to talk to you about relationships or sex or divorce work, what should they do?
Best way to get in touch with me is through my website, which is peterroussos.com, peterroussos.com, and you can email me from the contact me page.
And Mark, if somebody wants to talk to you about financial infidelity and other financial issues that impact divorce, what should they do?
Website, same thing. It's Pacific Divorce Management is the company, pacdivorce.com, pacdivorce.com. Contact form on there, and we're very prompt in getting back to you if you come through that door.
And for a legal perspective on divorce or needing somebody to help you work things out in a mediation, contact me at WeberDisputeResolution.com. Again, that's WeberDisputeResolution.com. All right, guys. Well, till
Shawn,
next time.
I miss it when you say Weber like the grill.
Like the grill.
Yeah, well,
right.
thanks for reminding me that, because people
and a
misspell
dispute
it.
like we had a disagreement.
Yeah.
And resolution like we solved it. That's so.
That really is good marketing, isn't it?
Yes.
Genius, I might say. And I'm humbly at your service.
All right, guys.
Till the next time. Bye.
Take care.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Three Wise Men of Divorce: Money, Psych, and Law. If you like what you heard, be sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and share with others who may be in a similar place. Until next time, stay safe, healthy, and focused on a positive, bright future. This podcast is for informational purposes only. Every family law case is unique, so no legal, financial, or mental health advice is intended during this podcast. If you need help with your specific situation, feel free to schedule a time to speak with one of us for a personal consultation.